Before we continue with our next panel, Ambassador Schlein, you wanted to make another remark?
Yes, I'm very glad to be here today, and I was happy to hear from our other guests. One thing is important. We could only have viable sustainability if we all work together. And this kind of conference is exactly the place to speak about this. If we all cooperate, governments, NGOs, and the public, we can get over the pandemic and go to a different future. So thank you so much.
Thank you for being here with us. It was a pleasure. Our next panel will be dedicated to the day-to-day challenges on the ground and experience. We will discuss the UN Food Program, then we will move on to Nigeria, and then to the founding partner of Ignite Power. We shall try to learn how the COVID has changed the work of those people on the ground, what adjustments were needed to do and how they were done, and we'll take some lessons from them. So let me just present our panelists. Mrs. Kate Newton, the Deputy Regional Director of the UN World Food Program. Mr. If Adebayo, Special Assistant to Innovation and Entrepreneurship, Office of the Vice President in the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And Mrs. Angela Homsey, co-founder and investor in Ignite Power. Do we have all of them online with me? I can only see Mr. Adebayo. Do I have your name correct? Adebayo?
Yes, Adebayo. Yes,
Adebayo, feel free to correct me. Adebayo. All right. Since I see you already, and I do not see Mrs. Newton and Mrs.
Yeah, I'm here. Can you not see us or hear us?
They're all online? All right.
I'm here too.
So let's begin with Mrs. Newton from the UN World Food Program. Maybe you can tell us a bit about your work, your activities, and how the COVID-19 affected your day-to-day, operation.
Yes, certainly. Thank you very much for inviting us to talk today. I'm as you said, the Deputy Regional Director of the World Food Programme, and at the moment we cover 16 countries across the Middle East, North Africa, and parts of Central Asia. And at the moment we estimate there's around 54 million people across our portfolio who are hungry or in need of some form of food assistance. And just to put this into context, conflict and economic crisis this year have obviously been the main drivers of hunger, but COVID's added a lot of strain to the hungriest of the hungry poor. And just looking at why that's happened, I think we're probably all quite familiar with the decreased market function and the fact that there's been decreased commodity movement as a result of that. Cross-border trade's been affected, and therefore that livelihoods have been affected. So particularly for people who are working in the informal sector, this means that there's been less income coming into houses, that household purchasing power has been reduced, and that food access generally has been reduced for many of the most vulnerable people across the region. So our work has really been ramped up, meaning that many governments have stepped forward and asked us if we could increase our food assistance programs. And that doesn't always mean just handing out food. Sometimes that's also giving people cash transfers or helping to strengthen the social protection systems of governments and helping them to make sure that basic service provision is in place. We also run large school feeding programs across the region where we help governments to give food to children. And even where schools have closed, we've continued to try to adapt by, for example, giving children take-home rations, or for some children where they come from the poorest families, giving cash to their families to encourage them to keep going with online schooling and to try to make sure that children are still getting that essential nutritious snack to help them to keep learning. And just in terms of the kind of work that WFP does as well, we're also a global logistics provider. So we help to provide a humanitarian air service to move humanitarian personnel and supplies around the region during the COVID pandemic. And at the moment, although we have food in our title, we're looking at how we can help with vaccines and how we can help to ensure that, for example, the cold chain that's used to move vaccines around the world is going to be available, particularly for countries where they might have real difficulty getting the vaccines out to certain areas of the country.
So, Mrs. Newton, before I go to your colleagues, I want to ask you this question. How do you reach the people that are unreached or are, you know, in rural areas, and people that are unregistered or you know, they don't have access to your services or they're unaware of your services. I mean, I suppose the big challenge is to reach those people who are really in a need and that are not, you know, in the closed circles and don't know how to get and how to be helped. How do you reach them?
I think there's two answers to that question. One is that our expertise is really working in rural areas, and we're there at the request of the governments and local authorities. So usually they help us to get access to the most remote areas, and we have a whole range of different ways we do that, which is using normal access where that's possible, and then using more extreme forms of access when, if not, where we move food and people down rivers or across very rough territory using a whole range of different means, sometimes using local community associations to help with the last mile of delivery. I think the interesting thing about the COVID pandemic is that it's really calling us to question how we respond in urban areas as well, which hasn't really been traditionally our thing, because we've generally been working more with rural communities and with very poor farming populations, and now we're looking at urban contexts as well.
All right. I'll turn now to Mr. Adebayo, and you are a special advisor in innovation for the Nigeria government. Can you tell us a bit about your handling and day-to-day on-the-ground operation or innovative things that you had to do in order to tackle the great pandemic?
Thank you very much. So the pandemic came at a very critical time for Nigeria. Like you're aware, Nigeria is a country that gets a lot of its revenue from the sale of crude oil. And so when there was the downturn, the drop in the prices of crude oil in 2016, thereabouts, 2015, 2016, we went into a recession. And so in that period, we had to come up with a lot of programs and projects that enabled us to come out of recession. And then this pandemic came just as we were getting out of recession. So we had to go back to the drawing board and have a rethink. So we had different approaches. One was on the medical side, how we had to quickly ramp up the capacity of the NCDC, the Disease Control Agency, and enable them to be able to build labs. And now we have more than 60 labs in the country that are able to test for COVID-19. But also on the economic side, we had to set up, the president set up the Economic Sustainability Committee, which was chaired by His Excellency the Vice President. And the responsibility of that committee was to come up with proposals that could help the country to manage the economy in this period. And so what the committee did was to look at the key issues, the key economic factors that we could immediately tackle. And so we looked at sectors such as agriculture, because in Nigeria, agriculture, the GDP of Nigeria in 2019, agriculture contributed about 22% to the GDP. So we had to look at how we can support agriculture. We had to look at how we can support young people. And then we also had to look at the digital economy, how we can basically maximize this time to support people who want to work from home, to support startups who want to build new digital tools. And so we had to basically come up with all these programs, and also housing, because we realized that one of the sectors that can employ lots of people is housing, because then you're employing masons, you're employing carpenters, you're employing bricklayers, you're also supporting the cement industry, the architectural industry, and all of that. So housing was also one of the key things we looked at, and we came up with a program to build 300,000 new housing units within the next 3 years. And so these are things that we knew we're going to pump funds directly into the economy. But we then also had to look at the humanitarian and the social part of things and say, how do we support those who don't have anything, those who don't have an option? So we had to ramp up the government's social investment program, which was already ongoing, which involves a cash transfer program. The cash transfer program involves giving 10,000 naira, which is about, in dollars, that would be about $1,000 is so I'll do the calculation. So about 10,000 naira monthly to families who are totally unable to get anything at the moment. So what we did was to ramp up those numbers from 1 million families to 2 million families. So what you find is that a lot of them are also then able to do a lot more. And how did we reach them? Because I know you asked the question about reach earlier. So we ran this via a World Bank program, where the World Bank uses certain indices to identify the poorest in the poor communities. So we already have data on the poor communities, but we're also then able to use community-based and community-based targeting to access the poorest within those communities and put them on a social register. So we're able to get the biometrics, we're able to get everything that that ensures that we are able to limit corruption within that system and get the funds directly to them.
We heard from Mrs. Newton, and now I hear it from you as well, with respect to cash distribution. And I'm just wondering, many countries around the world, took to this route of just giving cash to people. But we found out that, many people, specifically maybe poor people, they get the cash and they don't want to put it back into the economy in order to get businesses moving, but they rather save the money for another rainy day. Do you think also in your country, the cash distribution, was that helpful?
Yes, the cash distribution has been quite helpful. So what we also did as part of the cash distribution is to encourage savings in a way. So to encourage what we call groups of cooperatives. So if you're supposed to be on the cash register for 2 years. So within that period, you're either supposed to learn a skill or join the savings program, which means you save a percentage of the cash and you're able to start up a business within the 2-year period. So you're being educated that this cash program, you're supposed to be on this for 2 years. The only people who do not have a time limit on the cash program are those who are very aged and disabled and unable to really do anything for themselves. But we like to encourage people to get off the cash program in 2 years.
Thank you so much. Mrs. Homsi, Angela Homsi, you are the co-founder and investor and director of Ignite Power. It's good to see you. Maybe you can tell us a bit about your work on the ground during the pandemic and how things have changed in this crazy year.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me here with you today. I'm quite proud to be talking about what we're doing in Africa and beyond. And I'm an Israeli based in Dubai. So there's an angle where hopefully Israel and Dubai are collaborating as well for work in Africa and for development. So I'm happy to share our work. So we've been for the past few years, even before COVID, supplying solutions to what we believe were some of the most pressing and vital needs of our times. Energy, clean access to electricity, water, agricultural solutions for food, for better food, better yield, and remote medical care and diagnostics. And we've been doing that in a part of the world that has one of the biggest unmet population that have been left out of the modern system until today, which is the rural and semi-urban Africa. And what we've believed for a while is that the best solutions to these problems, to be able to address those really vital problem in a very scalable way, is to embrace decentralized and distributed systems and technologies. So we're serving those remote population through smart usage of disruptive technologies, a lot of them Israeli, coming out of Israel, strong precision operations, strong customer focus, and working really in very close partnerships with government, with multilateral institutions such as the World Banks and other, and really believe in a business models where we have the ability to go very deep to the last mile, with affordable and deeply affordable solution, thanks to the scale that we're bringing as being a last mile operators and financier of those technology. So we went down of providing safe access to electricity to remote population across Africa to as low as $1 a month that had to be provided to get access to those technology to the poorest part of the population. And we really believe that that's the only way that you can really democratize access to vital goods, is by leveraging technology and a very deep last mile precision operations. So that's what Ignite does.
In what countries and areas?
So the areas are access to electricity through solar power and through hybrid. We're doing as well remote and medical care diagnostics, and that's using, AI-based solutions for devices and for all the way from ultrasound to X-rays to readings that are usually hospital-grade reading, and a whole range of solutions that are really bringing the hospital out of the hospital to the homes in deep rural areas.
I was wondering, what countries do you work?
Sure. So we started initially in Rwanda, which we know have had a close relationship as well with Israel. So we started in Rwanda 7 years ago now. Since then, we've proven a very strong track record there, being all across the country, serving population in partnership with the government, and we're expanding across really East Africa, Central Southern Africa. Mozambique is another big country of operation, and West Africa as well. And today our teams has as well a very strong presence in the Middle East, so expanding to Africa and the Middle East, where there's as well a very deep needs for those solutions.
Okay. I will now ask the same question for the three of you, but I will start from you, Mrs. Homsi. The question is, what is your expectation beyond, beyond that year? So we are maybe getting into the phase where we're going to have, 3 to 6 months a vaccination, maybe also in Africa. And what is your expectation with respect to how do you thrive the economy, put it back on track? You can start, and then I'll ask Mrs. Newton the same question, and then Mrs. Abadayo the same question. What is your expectation for 2021 and beyond?
Sure, that's a great question, because what we believe during COVID is, we're a technology company. So what COVID has done is really to accelerate the awareness of everybody, all the players, on the importance of deploying those technology at scale on the field, on the ground for those population. And I think what COVID has done is a great accelerator. Unfortunately, a lot of people suffered from the conditions, but at least I think that having had that focus on that, everybody understood that it's not a luxury to have those technologies in your home. When you have to stay at home, or when you have, it's not a luxury to have access to electricity, to internet, to information, to education, to healthcare. So hopefully that will eventually have a ripple effect, a silver lining for 2021, that a lot of this population will have been taken into the system sustainably, thanks to the deployment of those technologies. So I hope that 2020 has been a very difficult year for everybody, but that will help provide a much stronger foundation for the future from then on in the new normal that we will evolve in.
Thank you so much. Mrs. Newton, with the UN World Food Programme, what is your expectation for 2021 and beyond that? How do you see, what are your needs in order to, bring a better service, I suppose, or help more people?
I think this point is very optimistic from Angela. She was talking about, how this has made it really clear that we have to kind of roll out technology across the world more equitably and so on. I think that from our perspective, the key worry we have is that we haven't really felt the socioeconomic impact yet. I mean, we're feeling it. We're seeing a larger caseload of people in need. We've got many governments asking us to increase the number of people that we're helping them to assist. Problem is, we don't have the resources for it, and we don't think the resources are going to be easily coming forward, because most of the governments who are our key donors are also experiencing their own pinch. And so this is the real issue that we're grappling with for next year. So, I mean, looking at the positive side of that, what do we need to do better? And it's the kind of things we always focus on. And I think, better use of technology is certainly one of them. We're trying to minimize duplication of people we assist by using more biotechnology and iris scanning and using blockchain and doing all those types of innovations where we have access to them. But we're going to be making some very tough choices next year. And I think I've mentioned already, but one of the things that we're trying to do in partnership with others is to help, obviously, to roll out the vaccine and to help the pandemic to be managed globally as quickly as possible. But yeah, I think our real concern at the moment is that numbers of those at the very bottom of each society where we're helping is just the number's going to increase over.
Mr. Abdayo, it's interesting to me that the three of you, when we are talking about, I mean, you are the innovation advisor here, but your two colleagues talked about next year as, you know, what they need is technological solutions. So maybe you can give us heads up, how do we proceed in economic dire times with, you know, technological solutions?
Thank you very much, and I agree totally with them. I think 2020 has moved us forward in the digital space, and things that we thought were going to happen in 10 years are now happening very quickly. And for us in Nigeria, we recognize that, which is why, as part of our economic sustainability plan, one of the key things we want to do is digital identity. We want to be able to identify every Nigerian so that we're going to be able to reach everybody digitally. Also, we're looking at a lot of investments within the digital space, and the Israeli embassy in Nigeria is actually being very helpful. There's an innovation center which was opened last week, which was funded and totally driven by the Israeli embassy, and they flew in experts from Israel who are supporting Nigerian innovators to build new products and come up with solutions that can solve various challenges within the country. So I think 2021 will be a year that we will have to dig deeper into our investments in technology and into our interest in technology to ensure that we're able to meet up with the new global normal, what I'll call the global normal. Thank you.
So when you talk about technology, this is quite wide. Are you talking about financial technology or medical technology? What are you looking for?
I think it has to be all. I think it has to be all around. So what we are trying to encourage, we're trying to encourage people to build solutions across sectors, but use technology as an enabler. So if you're building a medical solution, how can technology enable you? If you're building a solution on traffic, to reduce traffic, how does technology enable you? So using technology as an enabler across sectors. Nigeria, for example, is known worldwide for its innovation in fintech. So we have big Nigerian organizations. We have Visa recently investing about $200 million in a Nigerian technology startup. So we have a lot of these stories already. And how can we extend beyond the fintech space and look into agriculture? How can we use technology to support the agriculture space? How can we use technology to improve our social investment programs? How can we use technology to improve our investments in real estate? And how can we generally use technology to build the economy across every sector?
Mm-hmm. Right, maybe a last remark from Mrs. Homsi. Again, when we're talking about international cooperation, do you have any other remark or comment with respect to what is needed in order to have your service being better served to rural areas and maybe to the poor?
Look, when we started Ignite, we realized quickly that we cannot do any of it without a very, very strong collaborative business model. And we always said that when we were starting, we were sitting on the shoulder of giants. And now we do that across countries, I'm not just talking about donors with corporates, with local financial system and with international investors, but I'm talking as well across borders. So we have teams in Israel, teams in Dubai, in the UAE. We have teams as well located all over the countries in Africa, obviously, where we operate. And all these governments and countries and teams are collaborating together to brainstorm on how are the best technologies and how to integrate them. To your question about which technology, they need to be integrated in a platform for smooth delivery in order to enable scale and affordability. Because without having scale and affordability, you don't solve the problem. Technology stay in a lab or serve like 1 or 2 villages, that doesn't solve the problem. It's only by deep integration between the fintech part of it together with the data analytics that you need for the operations and for the logistic of your teams, together with the AI and machine learning that you need for the agricultural systems or for the medical system that you can actually deliver the solution. So basically, without deep collaboration, it doesn't happen.
All right. So Mrs. Newton from the UN World Food Programme, Mr. Abdayo from the Federal Republic of Nigeria, advisor on innovation, and Mrs. Angela Homsi, co-founder of Ignite Power. I thank very much the three of you for all the work that you do and all the goodness that you try to distribute around the world. It's highly appreciated, and lots of success in your future endeavors. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.